Hi, I'm Don Blackwell. I'm the Executive Director of the Gospel Broadcasting Network. Welcome to this episode of Truth on Wheels. Today, we're going to talk about looking for the best in other people. Recently, I was a guest preacher in another city, and as I was speaking, I noticed a man in the audience who seemed just put out at what I was saying. And especially when I would say certain things, he would grab his Bible and he would open it as if to say, yeah, he's wrong about that. When I got through, I went to the back of the auditorium and I was waiting for him to come and speak to me. And I thought, boy, he's really going to let me have it. And I was getting ready inside for that. When he got to me, what he said surprised me. He said, I love to listen to you. He said, I could listen to you all day. And he said, I just can't say enough. And he went on and on. And it occurred to me how I absolutely misread the situation. But I thought I saw all the signals. His body language was communicating to me, and I was not wrong about this, but I was wrong about it. And I thought to myself, what if he had not made it over to speak to me? I would have left that evening having certain conclusions in my mind about this man, and they would have been absolutely wrong. They couldn't have been further from the truth. But you know what? People do this all the time. And I'm not the only one. We all do this. In the King James Version of the Bible, there's an interesting phrase that appears in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 4. In the King James, the phrase is evil surmisings. Now, we don't say that anymore, and you may not be familiar with that term, but I promise you're familiar with the experience. You might even be guilty of it, or you might have been the victim of it. The New King James, instead of saying evil surmisings, it says evil suspicions. Now, that's more the way that we would talk. Evil surmising or evil suspicion is when we think the worst about other people for no reason, without any clear evidence. We jump to conclusions. We misread the situation, and instead of giving the benefit of the doubt, we attribute evil motives. What it means is you assume the worst without adequate evidence. Now, this type of thing, now listen, this sort of thing could stem from a heart problem. It could come from a jealous spirit within you. It could be a reflection of your own evil heart. It could be that you are attributing to others what you do. That is to say, you assume other people act like you act. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. You assume that this person was talking about you behind your back because you talk about other people behind their back. A man told me on one occasion, he said, all men cheat on their wives. Think about that. He said, all men cheat on their wives. Well, what's the implications? What does that say to you about this man? He said, I cheat on my wife. That's the implication. He just assumes that all other men do that as well. I said, I know at least one who doesn't, and that's me. You might assume someone else cheats on their taxes because you cheat on your taxes. And so you look at somebody else and you think, I know why he said that. I know why he did that. I know why he acted that way. He's out to get me. And so you start attributing all sorts of motives to other people that aren't really there. King Saul in the Bible was notorious for this sort of thing when he surmised, he supposed, he imagined that David was out to steal his throne. Therefore, Saul couldn't trust David, even though David was completely innocent. David wasn't trying to rebel against him, but Saul was a rebel, according to 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 23. And so apparently he suspected David was also a rebel. Maybe he was imposing his own views and heart upon David. Very simply, what we're talking about is this. You're making assumptions about the motives of other people in a negative way. Now, this sort of thing causes problems in people's homes. Sometimes it's between brothers and sisters, sometimes husbands and wives. And when I say brothers and sisters, I don't just mean kids at home. I'm talking about families, adults, brothers and sisters that are split apart, sometimes because one is thinking, I know what he thinks. I know that, and they're completely wrong. It's this idea of looking at the worst, attributing the worst to others' motives, and oftentimes being wrong, jumping to conclusions. This sort of thing causes problems in schools. It causes problems in the workplace. And very unfortunately, very sadly, it causes great problems in the Lord's church. In the Bible, there is a story where God's people did this very same type of thing. Now, I'm going to tell you the story, and then we're going to draw some conclusions from it. Now, the story is in Joshua chapter 22. It's a real story. It's a historical account out of the Bible, and it's a classic example of assuming the worst. Toward the end of the 40 years that the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, they began to approach the land of Canaan. And in the book of Numbers, we're told that as they're on their way, they defeated several kings on the east side of the Jordan River. And 2.5 tribes of Israel liked the land that they were passing through, and they asked permission. They said, can we inherit this land on the east side of the Jordan River? And Moses said, sure. He allowed them to do this with conditions. He said, you can do it. You can have this land so long as you promise to go and to help the rest of Israel fight to take over the promised land on the west side of the Jordan River. All right, that's the background. Now here is the account, the story. In Joshua 22 and verse number 1. The text says, then Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh. And he said to them, you have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything that I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest as he promised, return to your homes in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan, that is, on the east side. But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commands, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all of your heart and with all your soul. So basically, Joshua is telling them, job well done, guys. He's relieving them of their responsibilities and their duties to help their brethren. You can go back, inherit the land on the east side, but he reminds them about their covenant to serve God with all of their heart and soul. All right, verse number 9. So the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan to return to Gilead to their own land. When they came to Gilead near Jordan, they built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. Now, this is important. They built an imposing altar there by Jordan. And when the Israelites heard that they'd built the altar, the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. Wow, this thing turned in a hurry. Right after being reminded to only worship God, what'd they do? They built a giant altar. And the rest of the Israelites, the ones that they'd just been fighting shoulder to shoulder with as partners and fellow soldiers, immediately they're ready to go to battle against them. Now, obviously, they're making some assumptions about why this altar is built. But before engaging in war, before they say we're going to go attack our brethren, the Israelites sent Phinehas the priest and a leader from each of the 10 tribes on the west side of Jordan to go and talk to them and to share their concerns. And so, verse number 16, this is what they said. How could you break faith with the God of Israel like this? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourselves an altar in rebellion against him now? Basically, they said, What are you thinking? How could you do this? We are sick to death that you have done this, and we're not going to stand for it. Verse 21, then Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans of Israel, no, we did it for fear that someday your descendants might say to ours, what do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you, the Reubenites and the Gadites. You have no share in the Lord. That's why we said, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. That is, you have jumped to conclusions. You have totally misread this. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you and the generations that follow that we will worship the Lord. That is, they said, you've looked at it. You have totally misread it. We built this because the day might come that they look and they say, they're on the other side of the river. They're not of us. This is a reminder we're brethren. We will worship the Lord. Now, let's draw some conclusions from this story. Number one, they completely misread the evidence. Those on the west side, they completely misread the evidence. Now, they might have thought that they were justified because they'd been fighting against these evil nations and their altars to false gods, and they saw it, and immediately that's where their minds went. They might have thought that they were justified. They might have thought our cause is righteous. But look how badly they misinterpreted the evidence. They concluded that their brethren on the east side had departed from God, when in actuality, it was completely 100% the opposite of this. They wanted to make sure that their descendants would understand what was going on. This was not wicked. It was good. It was a testimony that we will serve the Lord. We are with you. We are one nation. We are God's people. Here's observation number two. They had the good sense to stop and to ask. Think about this. What if they had not? What if they had not stopped to ask? What if they had just set up and begun a surprise attack in the middle of the night? It would have turned into a war. How many people would have died before they initially found out the truth? And then vengeance is involved. You killed my son. You killed my daughter. Then it doesn't matter. A war is going to ensue. Here's observation number three. When they did hear the truth, they fixed it. And that was the end of it. Listen to verse number 33. So the thing pleased the children of Israel. That is, when they heard the truth of the matter, the thing pleased the children of Israel. And the children of Israel blessed God. They spoke no more of going against them in battle to destroy the land where the children of Reuben and Gad dwelt. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad called the altar Witness, for it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. Now here is our lesson. It's a question. How do I avoid assuming the worst in others? How can I be a person who looks for the best in others is maybe a more positive way to say it. Number one, I want to suggest the word love. Practice love. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we call the love chapter, and practicing all the things in that chapter would be great and would help this, but I want to suggest one thing specifically, and this is verse number 7. 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And the idea is that love looks for the best in others. Love assumes the best in others. Love doesn't look at a situation and just jump to an evil conclusion. It's going to give the benefit of the doubt. Now, it doesn't mean that love is foolish and that love is just going to be run over and ignores evidence, but love looks for the best in others as long as it can reasonably do so. You know, Matthew chapter 7 and verse 1, people misuse this. It says, judge not that you be not judged. And people say, the Bible says you can never judge someone. That's not what that says, and it's not what the Bible says. I tell people next to Matthew 7 and verse 1, judge not that you be not judged. Right, John 7:24. The Bible there commands judging, but a certain type. He says, judge therefore righteous judging. What does that mean? We make judgments, but they're based on the truth. And when I'm looking at others, I need to be gracious. I need to look for the best, assume the best. I need to be righteous in my judgment. Matthew 7 forbids hypercritical, nitpicking, improper type of judgment. That's the type that's wrong. Number one, practice love. Number two, I'm going to suggest the word talk. In addition to love, talk. That is, go and find out. Discuss this. Think about what the Israelites did. They saw the problem and they went and talked to one another. Matthew 5:23 says, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, then come and alter your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are in the way with him. Now, what's the point? You've got a problem with your brother? Go and straighten it out. Go and talk to him. Oftentimes, when you just start talking, you can fix things. But people don't always do that. They begin to think, oh, I know what he's thinking. I know why he's turning the other way. And it just grows. Luke 17:3 says, if your brother sins against you, rebuke him. That is, you're going to go talk to him. You're going to say, you did me wrong. If he repents, forgive him. The end of the matter. Matthew 18:15 says, moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. What's that mean? Go and talk to him. Keep it private. If he hears you, you've gained your brother. Again, what if Israel had not followed this step? Number one is love. Number two is talk. Number three is listen. So what did they do? What did those on the west side do with those on the east side? They went and they talked and they listened. They asked and they listened, Joshua chapter 22. And so both sides told the story. Both sides listened. Listen to what Proverbs 18 and verse 13 says. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. What does that mean? Listen. Take time to listen to what they say before you make a decision. Next, pray. So what do we have to do? Love, talk, listen, and pray. If you can't resolve this, maybe it turns out you're right. Maybe the person is out to get you. Maybe they have done something that's wicked. Maybe they won't fix it. Maybe they are your enemy. What do? Matthew chapter 5 and verse 44, Jesus said, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the sons of your Father. Notice that part in verse 45, that you may be the sons of your Father. You make sure that your heart is right. Regardless of what they do, you make sure that you are right with God. Now, I want to conclude with several proverbs. I'm going to give you about 5 proverbs and we'll wrap it up. The first one is this. Proverbs 17:14 says, the beginning of strife is like releasing water. What does that mean? The beginning of strife, trouble, turmoil. It's like releasing water. Think about a dam and the water starts to come out. If you open it or you open the dam gates, the water starts. How are you going to stop it? When that water comes, you're not going to stop it. The beginning of strife is like releasing water. It starts and you've got a flood coming. So listen what he says. The beginning of strife is like releasing water. Therefore, stop contention before the quarrel starts. Here's a second one. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. Don't be a hot-tempered man. Number 3, Proverbs 21:23, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Next, Proverbs 19 and verse 11. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. I'll give you one more. Proverbs 15 and verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Children of God should look for the best in others. It will make our lives better, and it will let us allow our light to shine to those around us. Thanks for joining us for Truth on Wheels. Until next time, be faithful.